New Year's Eve had always felt like a time of promise, a chance to wipe the slate clean and start fresh. I remember that particular night clearly, even though it was years ago now. The air was cold and crisp, carrying a faint scent of smoke from nearby chimneys and the subtle sharpness of frozen earth beneath a blanket of early winter frost. I was at a friend's house in a small, quiet town, a close-knit gathering of people I trusted, a circle of familiar faces who made the cold feel a little less biting. The house was warm and cozy inside, filled with the soft glow of fairy lights, the hum of music playing low, and the laughter of friends catching up after months apart. We'd been drinking cheap wine, sharing stories about the year that was ending, and making half-serious resolutions for the one to come. For a while, the world felt simple, safe, and full of hope. But as midnight drew nearer, the noise and warmth became overwhelming. I felt the weight of the crowd pressing in, the chatter and clinking of glasses dulling my senses, so I slipped outside, needing the cold to clear my head. The sharpness of the night air bit at my skin as I pulled my jacket tighter and took deep, steadying breaths. I stood there on the cracked sidewalk, the world muffled and softened by the darkness around me. Above, the sky was a deep, ink-back canvas dotted with distant stars, the kind of sky that feels endless and heavy all at once. My breath made little clouds that drifted upward and vanished in the stillness. I felt isolated but calm, a quiet contrast to the celebration spilling out behind the door I'd left. That's when I saw him. Across the street, beneath a flickering street lamp that cast long shadows, stood a man. He was alone, unlike the clusters of revelers I'd just escaped, and his presence was immediately unsettling. His figure was dark and still, wrapped in a heavy coat that looked worn but practical. A hat shadowed his face, hiding his eyes and most of his features, but something about the way he stood, motionless, watching, felt deliberate and chilling. I couldn't tell if he was cold or if the cold was just a backdrop to something colder entirely. He didn't speak, didn't move, just stood there like a statue carved from shadow. My heart began to beat faster, a creeping sense of unease curling through me like smoke. I wanted to look away, to turn back inside to safety, but I found myself frozen, unable to break the gaze. The muffled countdown inside the house began. Voices overlapping, breaking through the night like a rising tide. 10, 9, 8. I kept glancing back at the man. He was closer now, maybe 30 feet away, but still utterly silent, a dark figure standing against the dim glow of streetlights and the looming shadows of winter trees. His stillness was unnatural, as if he was waiting for something or someone. A sudden impulse to call out to him flickered through me, but my voice was caught somewhere deep in my throat. The cold air seemed to thicken around me, and I felt the weight of eyes not just on me, but beyond me, watching from the darkness. The countdown reached its crescendo, 3, 2, 1, and the sky erupted in a burst of color. Fireworks blossomed overhead, painting the night with streaks of red, green, blue, and gold. The joyous noise washed over me, and I turned eagerly toward the house, my lips parting to join the chorus of Happy New Year's and cheers. I was surrounded again by warmth and light, the embrace of friends who smiled and clinked glasses. It was a moment of release, of connection, a balm to the strange chill I'd felt moments before. But when I glanced back outside, the man was gone. It was as if he had melted into the shadows, leaving no trace but a hollow space where he'd stood. I told myself it was nothing, just a passerby who had left to avoid the noise, or someone drawn by the fireworks but indifferent to the celebration. I tried to shrug off the unease tightening in my chest, but it lingered, like a shadow just behind my mind's eye. Hours later, long after the last guests had left and the house was silent, I returned home. The streets were deserted, the cold biting deeper now that the revelry was over. As I unlocked my door and stepped inside, my eyes caught a small envelope slipped under the threshold. I knelt to pick it up, a flicker of dread tightening in my stomach. The paper was pale, the handwriting thin and precise, the ink black and slightly smudged at the edges. I unfolded it carefully and read the words that sent a shiver straight through me. Next year, I'll be closer. The message was simple, but it carried weight far heavier than the words alone could bear. I stared at it for a long time, heart pounding in the hollow silence of the room. Who was the stranger? How had he known where I lived? Was it a threat or a promise? The questions tumbled and crashed inside me, but there were no answers. only the cold and the night pressing in from all sides. For the rest of the night I lay awake, unable to shake the feeling of being watched. Every creak of the house sounded louder, every shadow seemed to stretch and move just beyond the corner of my vision. The coldness from the bracelet I wasn't wearing now wasn't physical, but it settled into my bones like ice. I tried to tell myself it was paranoia, that the mind plays tricks when frightened and alone. But even in the light of day, the memory of that man and his words haunted me, like a dark promise hanging in the air. The year passed slowly, each day stretching out with a heavy sense of waiting. As the next New Year's Eve approached, I found myself growing more and more on edge, eyes darting to every shadow, heart hammering with every unfamiliar noise. The note remained tucked away in a drawer, a silent threat that I dared not throw away. That night, I stood outside again, looking for the man who had vanished the year before, waiting to see if he would keep his promise and come closer. He didn't appear. But the fear stayed with me, a silent companion whispering that next time, the distance would shrink and the watcher in the dark would be right beside me. I had been longing to escape the endless noise and hectic pace of city life, so when the opportunity came to spend New Year's Eve in a remote mountain village with my partner, I eagerly agreed. Nestled deep within a dense forest of towering evergreens and rugged peaks that scraped the heavens, this village was a place where time seemed to slow, and the modern world melted away into whispers of old traditions. From the moment we arrived, I was struck by the sense of deep community and shared history that wrapped itself around the villagers like a warm blanket. The narrow cobblestone streets were alive with preparations, the smell of wood smoke drifting from chimneys, the chatter of neighbors greeting each other with hearty smiles, and the steady clatter of pots and pans from rustic kitchens. We wandered through the town square, where long wooden tables were being set, groaning under the weight of homemade delicacies. Thick slabs of roasted meats glazed with herbs, baskets overflowing with crusty bread, bowls of root vegetables simmering in savory broths, and platters of sweet, spiced pastries dusted with powdered sugar. As dusk gave way to night, the village transformed into a dreamscape illuminated by hundreds of lanterns hung from branches and strung between rooftops, their flickering flames casting dancing shadows against the faces of children and elders alike. The air was crisp and smelled faintly of pine needles and cold earth, tinged with a sweetness from burning cedar wood fires crackling in stone pits scattered throughout the square. Music filled the air. Traditional folk songs played on fiddles and flutes, their melodies weaving an enchanting spell over the gathered crowd. Villagers clasped hands and swayed in time with the rhythm, faces flushed with warmth, joy, and anticipation. My partner's hand found mine as we joined the circle of dancers, our fingers entwined, hearts beating together in the joyous hum of the celebration. There was a magic in the air that night, a feeling of togetherness and hope that seemed to promise renewal and peace for the coming year. The old town clock began to toll, its sonorous chimes echoing across the valley, and the entire crowd hushed in reverence as the final moments of the year slipped away. The sky was clear and studded with stars that glittered like scattered diamonds over the jagged silhouette of the surrounding mountains. Just after the clock struck midnight, a sudden shift rippled through the crowd, a chill that swept over the gathering like a dark wave. From the edge of the forest, thick, unnatural fog began to creep forward in slow, sinuous tendrils. At first, it was no more than a mist, but within moments it swelled into a dense, impenetrable curtain of gray that swallowed the lantern light and muted the music to an eerie silence. The warmth and laughter were abruptly snuffed out, replaced by a hollow stillness that pressed against my skin like a physical weight. The fog seemed alive, curling around the legs of those nearest, rising and twisting like a living entity, intent on enveloping everything in its grasp. Then, as if drawn into the mist's cold embrace, people began to disappear. It started so subtly that I almost questioned my own senses. A man stepping backward into the fog, then suddenly gone. No scream, no cry for help, just empty space where moments before there had been life and laughter. The disappearances multiplied rapidly, spreading through the crowd like a silent plague. Panic flickered in the eyes of those still standing, but the thick fog swallowed their voices and stifled their cries before they could escape. I felt my partner's hand in mine, strong and warm, and clung to it desperately, refusing to believe that this nightmare was real. But then, without warning, their grip loosened, and vanished like a wisp of smoke. I spun around, calling their name into the oppressive fog, but my voice was instantly devoured by the silence, fading away as if I had never spoken. Blinded by fear and desperation, I stumbled forward into the gray abyss, each step uncertain, heart pounding like a drum in my chest. The fog was damp and cold against my face, chilling me to the bone, and the shadows twisted and shifted with every breath I took. I reached out, hoping to find someone, anyone, who might have survived, but found only empty air. The once festive village was now a ghostly shell, devoid of warmth, sound, and life. Every landmark I knew seemed warped and distant, swallowed by the unrelenting mist that erased the edges of the world. My shouts echoed faintly before dying into nothingness, swallowed by the fog's unyielding silence. Hours passed. Or was it minutes? Time seemed to lose all meaning as I wandered, lost in the spectral haze. My legs grew heavy, my throat raw from calling into the void, but still I pressed on, driven by the flickering hope that my partner might be somewhere ahead, just beyond the reach of my sight. As dawn's pale fingers stretched over the horizon, the fog began to thin, revealing a village utterly transformed. The streets were deserted, the tables long since abandoned, the lanterns extinguished and cold. Not a soul remained. It was as if the entire celebration and everyone who had taken part in it had been erased from existence, leaving behind nothing but silence and shadow. The emptiness was overwhelming, crushing in its finality. I sank to my knees in the town square, tears freezing on my cheeks as the sun rose over the mountains, illuminating the ghost town in a harsh, unforgiving light. The joyous memories of the night before felt distant and unreal, like fragments of a dream slipping through my fingers. I was utterly alone, and with that loneliness came a terrifying question. What dark force had stolen an entire village, and more heartbreakingly, the person I loved most in the world? The chilling truth settled in my bones, that sometimes, even the most sacred celebrations can be swallowed whole by the unknown, leaving behind only the haunting echo of what once was. New Year's Eve at my grandparents' farmhouse was always an event that carried a weight of tradition and family history, one that transcended the mere passing of time. The house, a sturdy relic of a bygone era, with creaky floorboards and walls lined with faded photographs, seemed to breathe with the memories of generations before us. The scent of pine wreaths mingled with the rich aroma of roasted meats and the sharp tang of spiced cider, creating a sensory tapestry that wrapped around us like a comforting yet ancient cloak. The long dining table was a masterpiece of culinary abundance. Golden turkey with crackling skin, steaming bowls of buttered vegetables, homemade pies cooling on the windowsill, and in the center, crystal flutes filled with the pale gold shimmer of champagne. Family members from across the country had gathered, their voices weaving a warm hum of laughter and conversation, punctuated by the soft clinking of glasses and the occasional crackle from the fireplace. The room was lit by low amber lamps and the flicker of candles set in antique holders, casting dancing shadows on the walls and lending the evening a kind of timeless intimacy. As we finished the main course, my grandfather, a man of formidable presence with silver hair and eyes sharp as flint, called for our attention. There was a knowing smile playing at the corners of his mouth, a spark that told me a story was coming. One that wasn't just for entertainment, but a warning etched deep into the fabric of our family lore. He leaned forward, voice lowering to a conspiratorial tone that drew everyone close. "There's an old legend," he began, "about the last toast of the year. They say if you drink the very last glass of champagne at exactly midnight, you invite a shadow. Not a ghost, not a spirit you can see, something darker, something that follows you all year long. It watches, it waits, and it never leaves." The room was silent for a moment, eyes fixed on him as if the flames themselves had dimmed to hear more. Then, as if on cue, my grandmother laughed softly and teased him for spinning old yarns, while the younger cousins rolled their eyes but listened eagerly, their faces lit by candlelight and curiosity. Despite the skepticism, the legend hung in the air, a chill beneath the warmth of our gathering. The champagne glasses were passed around, the bubbles sparkling with promise and festivity. We joined together in the countdown. 10, 9, 8, voices rising in joyful chorus, breath held tight with anticipation. I was the last to drink, the final link in the chain of celebration. As my lips touched the rim of the glass and I swallowed the cool liquid, the clock began its final toll. At midnight, a sudden flicker dimmed the chandelier above us, casting the room into an uneasy half-light. I felt an unexpected shiver race down my spine, and a breath, colder than the winter night outside, ghosted softly across the back of my neck. My eyes snapped toward the window, where heavy curtains hung, slightly trembling in a breeze I could not feel. For a split second, I saw a shadow slip behind the fabric. Too quick, too subtle to be certain, but undeniable. The next day, life resumed its familiar rhythm. But beneath the surface, something had changed. Over the coming weeks and months, a quiet terror took root. Footsteps echoed behind me, just out of sight. Soft, deliberate, unrelenting. Whether walking down empty hallways, crossing deserted streets, or lying alone in bed, the presence was always there. A whisper of sound that made my heart leap and my skin crawl. Doors would creak open without cause, lights flickered inexplicably, and cold spots settled in my home like unwelcome guests. I tried to dismiss these as tricks of the mind, shadows cast by fatigue and stress, but the feeling of being watched never left. Friends remarked on the haunted look that clouded my eyes, and family expressed concern at my growing unease, but no one could see what I felt lurking just beyond the edge of their perception. I searched for answers, ancient texts, folklore, anything that might explain this curse and offer a way to break it. Some told of rituals to banish shadows, others warned against invoking them by name, but nothing brought relief. The presence remained a constant companion in the darkness and a shadow in every room. I grew isolated, fearful of the dark corners of my own life, haunted by the thought that the price of that last toast was far greater than the fleeting celebration it marked. And every New Year's Eve since, as the clock ticks toward midnight and the final glass is raised, I hesitate. The glass trembles in my hand, the room blurs, and the legend shadow looms large in my mind. I wonder, will this year bring the shadow closer? Will it slip behind the curtains again? I do not know if the curse is real, or if it lives only in the stories whispered around candlelit tables. But I know this, there is a darkness that clings to that last toast, a chill that no warmth can banish, and a shadow that waits patiently to follow me into the unknown year ahead. If the spectral dread of Midnight's Stranger, the fog-cloaked vanishing of the Vanishing Celebration, and the cursed chill of the last toast left you side-eyeing every shadow as the clock ticks toward midnight, dark heart of New Year's, where fresh beginnings twist into endless hauntings, celebrations dissolve into silence, and the stroke of 12 carries more than just hope, it carries a curse. Before you raise your glass to the future, shatter that like button. If these tales froze your blood colder than a winter's night, share this video with anyone brave enough to brave the countdown, and subscribe to uncover the horrors that lurk when the old year dies. Every click is a spark in the silence, a vow that the next nightmare is already ticking closer. Now, the question burns. Have you felt it too? The prickle of eyes on your back as the clock nears midnight, the echo of footsteps in empty streets long after the party ends? Maybe you've glimpsed a stranger lingering just beyond the fireworks glow, or felt a chill seep into your toast as the year turns. Whether it's a fog that swallows crowds, a shadow tied to a sip of champagne, or a vow whispered by something not quite human, we want to hear it. Confess your story in the comments, or send it sealed in secrecy. Your nightmare could be the key to next year's terror, or the final piece of a puzzle older than time. To those already haunted by the chime of midnight, ring the bell to ensure you never miss a descent into the year's darkest hours. Follow us into the static between seconds on social media, where we dissect cursed traditions, decode vanished villages, and dare to ask, what ancient debt comes due when the calendar turns? Dive into the description for links, eerie countdowns, and a map to the voids between years if you dare to step beyond the tick of the clock. As the final firework fades and the world holds its breath, remember this: New Year's Eve is not a fresh start. It's a threshold. The strangers in the dark, the mists that devour, the shadows bound to a toast, they've always been here, waiting, patient, hungry. The line between resolution and reckoning is as thin as a clock's second hand, and in the dark, it's stopped. So watch your reflections, count your steps, and if the champagne tastes too bitter, spit it out. The night is alive with watchers, and not all of them wish you well. Until next time, revelers and runaways, may your countdowns stay silent, your toasts stay harmless, and your shadows stay yours. But if they don't, we'll be here, listening for the whispers between the ticks.